Hey YouTube, Tom Houston with Tom Houston Photography here. This video I'm going to talk about the second place I went in my Southwest road trip, which was the Flagstaff area, which is basically, I'm going to talk about going to the Grand Canyon because Flagstaff is the nearest big city town to the South Rim. I highly recommend going to Flagstaff. It was a great town. It's a university town, so it's hip hop and happening. But it was a very nice town, so go to Flagstaff. So after the hike in Sedona in the early morning, we drove to Flagstaff, ate lunch at an amazing restaurant. It was called Pasto. Cannot recommend that restaurant enough. So if you ever go there, I hope it's still there. And it was amazing. So look up Pasto if you're in the Flagstaff area. Anyways, to photography and travel. So once we got to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, you get into the Grand Canyon Village, which is a highly populated tourist area. We weren't there in peak season, but there was still quite a bit of tourists there. So I recommend, once you get there, the lookout from the actual village is only really across the Grand Canyon. It's probably worth it to see it just because it's the Grand Canyon. But once you and at the Grand Canyon, get on the Hermit's Trail, which is a trail that goes west, and you get to two lookouts called Hopi and Mojave. Hopi's first, and then you can go to Mojave. We hiked the whole thing to a little past Mojave, but you can also take buses that drop you off at each of those lookouts. If you're lazy or want to look at all those places really fast, take the bus. If you actually want some exercise and to enjoy the Grand Canyon along the way, hike it. Personally, if I went to the Grand Canyon again, what I would do is I would stay in the village, maybe for like a night or two, and that way I could, one thing I would probably do is take the bus to the furthest point in the morning and then take pictures on my way back, or vice versa, hike all the way there and then bus back. It was kind of a small bummer I didn't get to see the whole trail, but it's like 9 miles long, so there's no way we could have hiked that in the time that we were there. But anywho, I took most of my sunset photos that I have up from Mojave Point, so that's like the early sunset shots and then the later sunset shots. Me and my dad, we sprinted to Hopi Point and got the last couple from there. My favorite point, was the Hopi Point, because you were looking perpendicular down the Grand Canyon. So you got to see all of the ridges kind of fade away into the distance, and when you take that shot at sunset, what happened when I was doing that night, there was a lot of different shades of blue between all of the ridges, just because how vastly large the distance is between them. So it's like taking shots of a mountain ridge. So it was very cool to see that. Another tip I have for taking shots there is do panoramas, because you can actually get all of the Grand Canyon pretty much in your shot instead of just getting a snapshot of it, because they don't call it the Grand Canyon because it's small. It's huge, so one photo won't really do it justice. So get panoramas and get a lot of them. What I do with my tripod is I just take a photo, move my tripod head about 10-15 degrees, I forget what it is, I think it's 10. I have those increments on my tripod head, and I just snap a photo. So one of my Grand Canyon panoramas is like 11 photos stitched together. It's like a 200 and something degree shot. Highly recommend doing that, because you can actually then come home and show people just how big that Grand Canyon is, instead of just being like, here's some cool rocks in a big wide hole, because you won't actually see the ends of it, which is half of the Grand Canyon. It's really wide and it's really long. So if you can only show one of those dimensions, it's not as good, in my opinion. So once we hiked back, we saw some deer in the village, which was kind of cool at night. We ate dinner there and then drove back to Flagstaff, and the drive back was actually pretty treacherous. You're probably wondering why it was treacherous. There was a ton of wildlife that come out at night, so elk. Yes, there was elk in the desert, so there was elk and there was deer, both of which, if you hit, you'll probably not have as good of a road trip as you dreamed. So if you don't want to hit an elk or hate driving at night with large wild animals like that on the side of the road that you might hit, I suggest staying in the Grand Canyon area that night, or not taking sunset photos and coming back before it gets dark. Basically before it gets cool, because the animals will come out once the blasting sun goes down a little. So that's my tip there. And then the next morning we drove out of Flagstaff to the east end of the Grand Canyon, which I'll quickly show on the map that you get at Grand Canyon, exploring the Grand Canyon. So over here, this is the Grand Canyon Village, and then over here, this is the Desert View east end of the South Rim. So it's quite a distance away. It's at the younger part of the Grand Canyon, I guess you could say. It's where it all kind of gets started, and it was very cool to see. So I suggest definitely going to the East Rim, they call it. It has a cool lookout at the Desert View, but you can also drive to another point on that road called Le Pan Point. I'm sure it's not French, but whatever. Lipan. It was great views from that, and it was kind of neat to see just how different the different areas of the Grand Canyon actually look. So very worth it to see if you have the time. And also the drive there was pretty cool. Very cool lookouts and stuff like that. So just to wrap up this video really quick, I'll say a couple tips I have for the area. If you don't like tourists, don't go there in peak season, and get on the trails, get away from the village. Excuse me. The village is where all of your tourists get off on buses and go to their lookouts right there, get all those shots. So probably most of the shots of the Grand Canyon are probably from those easy places. So always think to yourself, the harder the places to get, probably the less photos of that area there are. So when you come back and show people photos, it might be, oh, I've seen that one. Well, it's probably the classic, easiest shot you can get of the Grand Canyon. So go down the trails. I suggest the Hermit Trail. It's flat for the most part. It just goes along the rim. You can bus it if you really want. We did hike a little bit down the Bright Angels Trail, which goes into the Grand Canyon, but it was just too busy to really effectively go down there really fast. So we went down like 25 meters and came back up because it was just too busy. Desert View was nice, the East Rim. I recommend going there. We didn't go up into the visitor tower thing because it wasn't that high, and for what I think, I could be wrong, but the difference of view about 15 feet up in the air to just going to a lookout is probably not that significant, and I believe you had to pay to go in, so it just wasn't worth it, and I would rather take shots outside and not through a window. Anywho, my advice for the Grand Canyon, take a lot of panoramas, so you can actually get the vastness of the Grand Canyon in its width and its length, because you can either get one or the other, basically. Get a neutral density grad. so that you can darken the sky and not the ground, because the rocks are much, much darker than the sky during the day, especially and at sunset. So I highly recommend getting a filter like that. If you don't know what those are, I have a couple of videos, or you can just Google it. I also suggest, as in every video, to drink lots of water, stay hydrated, bring a water bottle, bring a hydration pack. My next tip is get the annual $80 pass. I said that in my first video, but not in the Sedona one. Always get that pass. By always, I mean get it once, and then you don't have to get another pass into a government-owned place. So if you go to the Navajo Point and you go to the Grand Canyon Village, let's say you do that on 2 different days, that's $50 right there of your $80 pass. So I highly recommend getting that pass. Save me about $60. And if you don't like driving at night with the potential of hitting a large animal, I would suggest or recommend staying at the Grand Canyon for that night and then driving to your next place during the day when there's not elk and deer roaming beside the road. But all in all, Grand Canyon was outrageously epic. Woods cannot really describe that place. I'll post a couple of photos up after this video, just to show some of them. I'm sorry I can't put up my panoramas because they're just too massive. The video software didn't let me last time, so you have to deal with my normal photos and check out my website for the panoramas. So anyways, I hope that helps. I'm sorry it was kind of rushed, but there was a lot of information that I had to throw out there, and I don't really want to make super long videos. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I have my email up on my website, or you can just send a comment down here or send me something on Twitter. I'll post my Twitter and blog and website below. So please subscribe. I hope that helps. And my next video will be on the Page area, which I might have to split into because there's a lot of stuff to do in Page. So yeah, hope that helps. Cheers.